ce qui donnait sur un chinois, une cordonnerie, une supérette. Dans le fond, il y avait un baby et un billard, le mobilier daté des 70s, du bois et du sky bleu. Les chiottes étaient sur la droite, plutôt propres, avec des stickers collés dans tous les coins. Il régnait toujours là-dedans une impression de fin de journée. La clientèle pouvait varier, la musique restait du rock. Dès la première gorgée, Rose sentit quelque chose se dénouer dans sa poitrine. La bière était fraîche, les pages du journal froissaient, et sous sa semelle gauche, elle pouvait sentir la solidité du métal du repose-pied. Ces trois sensations lui faisaient déjà un monde, un chez-soi convenable. Elle humecta son doigt pour tourner les pages, et Fred lui demanda ce qu'il y avait de neuf. Bof, pas grand-chose.
I'm going to read that opening in English, and this is translated by Sam Taylor. It's a different translator from the first book. Rose jumped off the bus and hurried across the street, paying no attention to traffic, although it was dense in both directions. She was wearing a pale cotton skirt that day and a pretty top that showed off her shoulders. A black jacket was slung across her handbag, and her heels were unmissably bright cherry red. From a distance, it was hard to guess her age, but the firmness of her figure and the fluidity of her movements suggested a certain youthfulness. Her legs, in particular, were still beautiful. Cars braked as she passed, causing a ripple in the smooth rush hour flow, and a bearded man in a Ford Escort honked his horn for the sake of it. Rose didn't even notice. She continued on her way, feet moving quickly, indifferent to her surroundings. She took off her sunglasses and slipped them into her purse just as she was opening the door of the Royale. The clattering echo of her heels faded to silence as she entered the familiar darkness of her local bar. She checked her watch. It was still early. Rose felt happy. She was thirsty. "Hi, everyone." "Hey," replied Fred, the owner. While he poured her a beer, Rose opened the newspaper. She came here every day on her way from work and always sat at the bar, legs proudly crossed at the knees, to sink her first lager of the night. It was usually about 7 o'clock when she got here. Often it was dark outside, except during summer, when Rose would feel a tinge of remorse. The Royale was a narrow dive with dark walls and a long bar, 3 draft beer pumps, and large dusty bay windows offering a view of a Chinese restaurant, a shoe repair shop, and a convenience store. In the back, they had foosball and pool. The furniture was from the 70s in wood and blue leatherette. The restrooms were on the right as you went in. They were pretty clean, with stickers all over the walls. The atmosphere in the bar was eternally late afternoon. The clientele could vary, but the music that came through the speakers was always rock. As soon as she swallowed her first mouthful of beer, Rose felt something loosen inside her chest. The beer was cold. The pages of the newspaper were crumpled, and beneath her left shoe she could feel the solidity of the metal footrest. Those 3 sensations were enough to make her feel at home, in her place. She licked her finger to turn the page, and Fred asked her what was happening. She shrugged. Same old, same old. So that's the opening, but we're going to bounce back for a second. That's the opening of Rose Royale. We're going to bounce back for a second and start with a couple of general questions, and then we're going to get more specifically into Rose Royale, which is the more recent book published here in the States. And I should say, so Nicolas's second novel, And Their Children After Them, which won the Goncourt Prize, came out here. I'll never forget it because it came out here early in the beginning of COVID kind of situation. It was one of the first. I was really excited about it, and I remember I think it was maybe the first book I ordered from. Square Books was shut, and it was kind of, I think they delivered it to my house in those early days. Would that have been right? Did you just drop it on my doorstep? I think so.
That or curbside pickup?
Yeah, curbside pickup. I know I did curbside pickup a bunch, but this was early enough that I think maybe somebody just brought it and left it outside my front door. So it came out at a, kind of, as many writers I think have stories like this, kind of an unfortunate time. Your books got lost, obviously. There was a lot of other stuff going on, so, it's okay. But So it's definitely, a book you should go back to. I'm going to ask one question about that book only, and then we're going to move on to Rose Royale. But I want to talk first about why Nicolas came here. So that's my first question, really about what drew you here. I know you love Faulkner and Larry Brown, other Southern literature, and what your experience has been like so far the past couple of weeks.
Tout ça remonte effectivement au prix Albertine que j'ai reçu à New York et où on m'a invité à postuler pour bénéficier d'une bourse de la Villa Albertine.
So he received a grant from the Villa Albertine in New York City. So he...
Donc les gens de la Villa Albertine m'ont dit tu devrais faire une résidence aux États-Unis, tu peux choisir absolument tout ce que tu veux. Il fallait juste monter un dossier. Et je me suis dit que je n'allais pas aller dans l'Amérique qu'on connaît le mieux, c'est-à-dire l'Amérique des côtes, Est ou Ouest.
So the Villa Albertine said you can do residency wherever you want in the U.S. and it's up to you, it's your choice. And he said, I would like to see America, but not the East Coast and not the West Coast.
Alors, derrière ça, il y avait l'idée de voir l'Amérique la vraie. Où est-ce que j'allais la trouver? Et donc j'ai cherché, et puis quand même, j'avais un tropisme, une attraction pour la littérature du Sud, parce que j'avais lu Faulkner, parce que j'avais lu Larry Brown, Carson McCullers, Flannery O'Connors, Lansdale, qui est du Texas, mais pour moi c'était le Sud aussi, et que tout ça m'a donné envie de venir ici.
He wanted to see the true America, and for him, he had an attraction already to literature of the South, to writers like Larry Brown and Flannery O'Connor and Carson McCullers. Who's the Texan writer?
Lansdale.
Joe Lansdale,
right, which he considers still the South.
From Friends, Texas is from the South.
So that's why he chose us.
Et puis il y avait aussi le fait que je savais qu'il y avait une petite communauté d'écrivains qui vivaient ici. En France, on vit encore dans cette légende de Missoula, une ville au nord-ouest de l'Amérique, nord-ouest, oui, où il y avait toute une communauté d'écrivains et qui nous a fait beaucoup fantasmer. Et je savais qu'il y avait quelque chose un peu d'analogue à Oxford, et notamment William Boyle, qui est très connu en France. Je vais vous dire pourquoi.
He knew of small communities of writers in the United States, particularly in Missoula, Montana. There's this kind of a community, and he knew that there's an analogous community here in Oxford, and he knew Bill Boyle's work.
Parce que William Boyle en France est donc traduit, et il a été le 1000e roman traduit d'une fameuse, une collection mythique en France pour le roman noir qui s'appelle Rivage. Et donc c'est comme ça que je connaissais son travail. Et puis il était venu à des festivals en France, notamment en Corse, et j'avais entendu dire que c'était un bon camarade.
Okay, so Bill Boyle is very famous in France.
Thanks, Nicolas.
He's publishing a mythical series,
Rivage.
Rivage.
Le 1000e livre de la collection.
Okay, so the bestseller.
Non, le 1000e.
The 1000th release, yeah.
Right. Okay, so he sold 1,000 copies of his book in France.
No, it was the 1000th, it doesn't matter. It's not that was the 1000th release of the Rivage Noir collection. So I was a nobody. They chose me for that release. It's not about me, guys. Thank you, though.
Okay, so they met at several festivals, particularly one in Corsica.
No, we never met.
We went to
we've been to the same festivals, and we knew a lot of the same people. So.
But you never met.
We never met before he got here.
But everybody told me it's cool, you can go there. Donc c'est comme ça que l'idée m'est venue de venir à Oxford. Et pour dire ce que ce séjour me fait, c'est compliqué parce que j'ai vu tant de choses, j'ai appris tant de détails sur l'histoire américaine, j'ai rencontré tant de nouvelles personnes. Je pense qu'il va me falloir quelques mois pour digérer ça. Je pense que la personne qui est arrivée et la personne qui repart ne sont pas exactement les mêmes.
So that's how the idea occurred to him to come to Oxford, and since he's been here, he's met so many people and he's had so many amazing experiences. It's going to take him a long time to digest it all. And what was the last thing?
I think I'm not the same when I quit the city than when I arrive. Maybe I'm bigger. Joking. But so many great experiences. It changed me in a way I don't know yet.
All right. So I'm gonna kind of switch gears. Just ask one quick question about And Their Children After Them, which is a brilliant book, and you should get that one too. Even though we're going to also focus mostly on Rose Royale tonight. It's a novel. Nicholas and I are the same age, and we have a lot of the same kind of cultural touchstones. The other day we were drinking a beer, and we both started talking about Sylvester Stallone movies and almost crying. It was beautiful. So we have a lot of the same, not just Sylvester Stallone, we have a lot of the same.
We are on Facebook. You can't
I know, I can't say that. Two beers in, I'm just letting everything spill. But, so we kind of have a similar, I think, trajectory in terms of kind of coming of age. And Their Children After Them is a 90s novel. It's set in the 1990s. It's a great coming-of-age story. I knew as soon as I opened it, part one is titled Smells Like Teen Spirit. I knew I was, simpatico with this guy. And, so I wanted to talk about it as a 90s novel, as a 1990s novel a little bit, and talk about that time as a formative cultural time for you and what kind of stuff you were interacting with that influenced the book, or what made you want to write this as a 90s novel?
Au départ, et c'est pas une coquetterie si j'ai choisi de placer ce roman, dont je savais que ça allait être un roman d'apprentissage dans les années 90, c'est parce que c'était plus simple pour moi. Parce qu'au lieu de devoir rencontrer les adolescents d'aujourd'hui et d'enquêter, j'allais pouvoir me fier à ma propre histoire. Donc c'est par paresse au départ.
So it wasn't laziness that he chose to set his novel in the 1990s. This was his experience growing up, and it was simpler for him.
C'est un livre de 400 pages dans lequel des adolescents ne cessent pas de se croiser et de flirter. Et il n'y a pas un seul téléphone portable. C'est un tout autre monde.
Okay, so it's 400 pages long, and it's the story of adolescents who get together and flirt with each other, and there isn't a single cell phone involved.
So it's a historical novel. Donc, sans le vouloir, pour être le plus juste possible dans ma peinture de l'adolescence, j'ai choisi une époque et chemin faisant, en racontant l'histoire de ces personnages, j'ai fini par faire le portrait d'une époque et d'une génération. Mais par petits détails, par les vêtements qu'on portait, la musique qu'on écoutait, les activités qu'on avait à ce moment-là. Ça n'a pas été un choix délibéré. À aucun moment, je me suis dit, ce roman sera le roman des années 90.
So without meaning to, he was doing a portrait of adolescence, and in turn of a whole generation, but by small details, by talking about the music that they listened to, their activities, and it was not a deliberate choice. It just came naturally.
Mais en l'écrivant, je me suis rendu compte que les années 90, elles avaient eu quand même cela de particulier, qu'elles sont comme une parenthèse, en tout cas en France, c'est comme ça qu'on l'a vécu, entre la guerre froide et le 11 septembre. C'est un moment, il y a eu 10 ans, entre la chute du mur de Berlin et le 11 septembre, où finalement, historiquement, pour un gamin qui vivait dans une petite région comme ça, l'histoire était finie. Il y avait plus grand-chose à rêver, ni révolution, ni guerre. On était tranquille pour toujours. Et la seule chose qui finalement nous animait à ce moment-là, c'était d'écouter du rock et de fumer de l'herbe.
Okay, so in writing about the 1990s, he realized it was kind of like a parenthesis in the world between the end of the Cold War and 9/11. And so historically, it was this period between the fall of the Berlin Wall and 9/11, where things were very calm, and that adolescents were just interested in smoking weed and
Listening to rock.
listening to rock.
And to be in love, of course.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears and talk about Rose Royale a little bit. And we've spent a lot of our time over the last couple of weeks talking about books and movies, and it was great to hear that Rose, the main character of this book, was inspired by two of my favorite characters from two of my favorite films. Faye Dunaway as Wanda in Barbet Schroeder's Barfly, written by Charles Bukowski, and Gloria, Jenna Rollins as Gloria, and John Cassavetes' great film, Gloria. So I wanted to just get you to talk a little bit about the creation of this character, those influences, but also the origins of the book. You were telling me at the bar earlier, which I didn't know, that this book was commissioned, essentially. So.
Oui, souvent on se fait une image de ce qu'est un artiste et de ce que c'est l'art comme quelque chose de très inspiré, qui est mu par une gratuité ou des nécessités intérieures, mais des fois simplement on vous commande un texte.
So we have an image of the artist as someone who's very inspired and is working from his own imagination, but in this case it was a commissioned work.
J'étais dans un festival de romans policiers en Bretagne. La Bretagne, c'est la partie la plus alcoolique du pays. Et c'était à l'heure du déjeuner, et on mangeait des moules, et donc on buvait beaucoup de vin blanc. Et mon voisin était un écrivain éditeur.
So he was at a book festival, and in Brittany, which is the most alcoholic part of France, he was having mussels and white wine, a lot of and it was at that point when he agreed.
J'étais juste à côté I was having lunch with a writer which is also a publisher, and he asked me for a novella, a long novel. And usually, I don't accept that kind of thing because I'm too lazy. And, but I was a bit drunk, so I told him, okay, I'm gonna do that. And the next day, I had to do it. So that's how it starts for Rose Royale. And I was thinking about what kind of story I could write. It was I have some obligation. It has to be a crime novel. So I thought about it, and I had the idea to make that character, who is Rose, from two female characters in movies. First, Faded Away in Barfly. Did you see that movie? Yes. It's about a woman and a man, and they drink. And it's quite good. And it's an adaptation from Bukowski, and he wrote about the adaptation and the shooting of the movie, and he wrote that Faded Away asked him to make her a scene in which we can see her legs, because she's very proud of her legs. So he did it, and it reminds, you know, in the part I read before, you can find that little detail. And finally, a character is built like that, with many small details on inspiration. And there was this image of fading away, a bar, her legs, and Gloria. Gloria is a Cassavetes movie, and it's a random woman, and she has to protect a kid, and she gets a gun. And the most famous pic of the movie, we can see Gloria who have a gun like this. And I had these two pictures to start writing. And she arrived in a bar. She has so many trouble with men all along his life. And on this day, she decided it's finished. No more problem with men. And to be sure, she buy a gun.
I'm going to get back to that in a second, I think, or maybe it ties into this question, but America, I think, generally, probably, is not kind or not interested in the short novel so much. Obviously, there are exceptions, but for the most part, you know, I think novels are the novels that are kind of out there and successful are in the 300, 400 page range. I always love a short novel. You know, I'm drawn to, in particular, I think a lot of classic American noir, which is very often in the 90 to 150 page range, and there's a lot of great French crime fiction that is also in that range. So I wanted to talk about this as a short novel or as a novella. In particular, I wanted to talk about the influence of, I know a writer we both love, a writer you call your hero, a writer who's meant a lot to me in translation, a French writer named Jean-Patrick Manchette. But also the influence of American crime fiction. I know that along with these films you mentioned, you know, weighs heavily on this book. So can you talk a little bit about Manchette and American crime writers who influenced what you were doing here?
Moi, je viens d'une famille dans l'est de la France qui n'est pas du tout une famille d'intellectuels. Mon père a arrêté ses études à 14 ans et ma mère à 16 ans. Et donc, devenir écrivain, pour moi, c'était quelque chose, c'est un désir depuis toujours, mais c'était aussi quelque chose de très effrayant et intimidant.
So he comes from the east of France, and his parents finished their studies at 14 and 16 years old. His father at 14, his mother at 16. So his parents did not have a formal education, and he was really interested in going further in talking about this milieu.
No, it's because I came from a background which is not very cultivated, and for my childhood I wanted to be a writer, so it was intimidating for me to go in this kind of job, to dare to write, to confront to people who are in this kind of field. And Manchette, Jean-Patrick Manchette, is a French writer who was very intellectual, but he think about the way with crime novel you can do very good writing without carrying the weight of literature. It helps me to find my way. I write some suspense, some crime stories. It doesn't look like that complicated, but if you look more carefully, you can find many details, effort on the writing, on the a vision of the world, a vision about class struggling structures, all those things. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
Yes. Manchette is a great writer, and he showed me how to use pop culture to do what I wanted to do, and maybe I was not sure to be able to. Is it okay?
And Manchet, if you've never read him, many of his books are available in translation via NYRB. There's a new one coming out, I think, next, or the most recent translation. He's not alive, but they've been slowly translating his books, and NYRB's done a lot of them. City Lights did, I think, 2 of them early on, but most of the recent stuff, or all of the recent stuff, has been NYRB. Highly recommend reading those books. Some of my favorites too. So I want to talk about bars in literature and in films, or however you want to take that. We've talked about Barfly a little bit already. This book isn't only set in a bar, but it is, it's largely set in a bar, or there's characters who move between bars and other, apartments or restaurants, but there's a lot of bar here, a lot of bar setting here. So are there films, books, influences in terms of, other than Barfly, that you look at as, great iconic art set in a bar atmosphere?
Oui, il y a, je sais pas si tout va me revenir, mais quand j'étais adolescent, j'ai lu tout Bukowski, et j'étais complètement fasciné par cette culture du bar, avant même d'avoir le droit d'y aller.
So when he was young, he was reading a lot of Charles Bukowski, and he was fascinated by the bar scene, even before he had the right to enter one.
Évidemment, il y a beaucoup de films et de livres. Il y a un livre, notamment ces dernières années, qui m'a beaucoup frappé, mais je ne me souviens plus du nom de l'auteur, qui s'appelle Un dernier verre au bar sans nom. Est-ce que quelqu'un... Don Carpenter, do you know him? Don Carpenter?
Oh, Don Carpenter, yeah, great. Hard Rain Falling, and Friday at Enrico's, great.
So what would the title be? The last glass?
Don Carpenter book? Hard Rain Falling is his...
San Francisco bar.
Oh, Friday at Enrico's, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
En tout cas, une des choses qui m'intéresse, parce qu'il y a des bistrots et des gens qui boivent dans tous mes livres, c'est que les bars, c'est à la fois un concentré de l'existence humaine, c'est presque ce qui se fait de plus petit comme communauté. Oui. Et c'est une toute petite communauté.
So one thing that interests him the most about the bar is how it's a concentration of humanity, but then it's also a very particular, very small community.
So it's a very small part of the world you can study, and it's also something mythical in America, but also in France. In France, we have the bistro, and we spent a lot of time. It was bigger in the past, but still, people go to the bistro, to the cafe, and spend time there to speak, to meet, to listen music, to drink alcohol or coffee. And as a writer, I'm very interested in myth. What's the big things who make the way we see the world? For instance, in France, school is a big mythology. How to achieve your career because of the school, le mérite. How can I say that? Yes. So there is a lot of social mythology like this in France. It's not the same in USA, but you have yours. And le bar, bistro, the place you go at night to have drink and meet people, it's a kind of mythology, and I'm fascinated by that. And it's always interesting to put some character there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I've been long before I could go to bars. I think I was interested in bars as a setting for I mean, even Cheers, a show like Cheers, but you know, reading Eugene O'Neill in high school and reading The Iceman Cometh, and yeah, so that's certainly one of the things that drew me into.
When I was 17, I was very, very, very in love with a girl in my class, and she didn't care at all. but at all. It was terrible. It looks like a long year for me at that time. And, her father was the owner of a bar, and I spent so much time in that bar just to see her cross the room. And I was playing pool, having beers. I was 17, it was illegal, but still. And at the time I was smoking too. And sometimes, for a few seconds, she was crossing the room. And maybe it's because of that too.
So it's kind of hard to talk about the end of Rose Royale without giving anything away. It's a short novel. I kind of don't even want to give away anything from the early part of the book, so I'm trying to tread carefully in what I say and don't say. But I will say two things, and maybe this is kind of the same question. A gun, as you said, factors into this book, a gun that Rose orders from an American website, of course. This is a book that, to me, I think disrupts expectations. You think it's going one way and it goes a different way. And I know you talked about writing several different endings for this book. So can you talk about some of that stuff without telling everybody the whole thing?
As I said, the start point was Rose had many bad adventures with men, and she decided she's 50, it's enough, never more. Never more a guy beating me or something like that, and to be sure she'd buy a gun. So it's a statement who makes some expectation in the mind of the reader. You're sure the gun is gonna be used at some point. It's logical. But as a writer, I'm not I don't feel like God in my creation. I'm not the master of the character. At first, I put them on the scene, and quite quickly, I follow them. And the more I write, the more the story gets big, the more I follow them. And I'm not the master anymore. And the project I had for Rose, it didn't work after all. And it's a thing which is very important. We don't decide always for characters. When you do your writing with honesty, you are not like how can I say, a dictator. You are like a witness, and you have to write what is just, what is fair, what sounds right, what looks believable. And on the first, I wrote a first end, the one I had in mind before I start, and it doesn't work at all. So I wrote a second one, then a third one, and it's the end of the book. But rewrite till I was satisfied about the rightness of the story.
Yeah, it's a really, well, again, I'm not going to say too much about it, but it is the kind of ending that surprises you and gets under your skin in a way that kind of can't stop thinking about it. It's more haunting and more realistic, I think, than another version of the book would have been. So it's really, really remarkable. I'll have one more question, just a general one, and then we can open it up to audience questions maybe. I don't want to ramble on too long up here. So Nicolas's next book is already out in France, been out for a while in France. It comes out in America in the spring of 2024. I'm reading it now. I have a galley of it, Connemara. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about this book and get these guys excited to pre-order it.
It's very original. It's a book about an affair. C'est l'histoire de Hélène et Christophe. Ils se sont connus quand ils étaient adolescents. Hélène était une adolescente plutôt transparente et lui c'était le champion de l'équipe de hockey, donc un peu la vedette.
It's the story of Helen and Christophe, who met as adolescents, and let's see, Helen is more transparent, and
she was not popular at all.
Not popular, and Christophe was a hockey player and champion.
Yeah.
And finally, she studied a lot. She get a good job. She goes to Paris, which is they think like that anyway. Parisian people. When she come back in her hometown, she feel like she's a big achievement. She's very proud, and she met Christophe again. And maybe he's not that successful himself. So she thinks, I could have my revenge on my youth and try to get that guy. The beginning is like that, but more deeply, it's about the relationship between two friends, the friends from the small town and the friends from the big town, the friends who studied, who make studies, sorry, and the people who don't, the friends who is afraid with mondialization and the world in general, and the friends which is well prepared for the world. The friends from Macron and the friends from Le Pen. And it's a love story, but it tells about how the country works or doesn't work.
I'm about 100 pages into it. I'm loving it. So I think it comes out in April or May of 2024 here. March. Okay, thanks, Richard. Audience questions. I don't want to go on too long and not leave time for audience questions. Anybody have any questions they would like to ask Nicolas? Don't be shy. Angela, thanks.
Is that Connemara set in Ireland, or is this a different, or do I have the name wrong?
It's a long and terrible story. We have a singer in France. His name is Michel Sardou, and he has a very popular song, Les Lacs du Connemara, the Lakes of Connemara. And it's a song very, very popular in a very small town. You can listen during 14th of July or maybe for weddings and for modest people. It's big, but it's also the song which is listened at the end of all the party in HEC. It's the biggest business school in France. So everybody knows that song. It's a common thing for all the country. But it's not the same thing if you are in the small town or the big, or if you earn a lot of money or not money at all. So it's a symbolic song.
Other questions? Anybody?
So I'm curious, you grew up reading Bukowski, you had sort of like this image of American bars, so how do the bars of Oxford sort of match the mythology?
There is a pretty nice bar just near from here. The grocery city is cool. And I went to many bars to investigate, naturally. And I'm not disappointed. And especially about the cocktail culture. We don't have the same in France. We drink, we have cocktail, but usually we drink wine on wine or beer. But yes, for a Faulkner reader to have his first hangover in Oxford, it's quite an experience.
Yeah, it was great to, for me, coming here from New York 15 years ago, I knew City Grocery because of Larry Brown, and so it was great to get to introduce Nicolas to that place as with Larry Brown's picture over the bar, and plaque on the bar, and all these incredible writers that we've got to introduce him to.
But there is a big difference between bars in France and the USA. In France, you don't tip, so they don't have to be nice with you.
Any other questions before we go to the bar? Roger?
Is this the real America?
Oxford is not really the real America. It's a bit of a bubble of culture on a lot of very, very nice people, but I think it's not the roughest place in America.
It's only 5 minutes from Mississippi.
Anybody else?
I have to go deeper, maybe.
Yeah. Any other last questions for Nicolas? Go on, Lisa.
Will you drink at the bar? Usually.
It depends. I was a beer drinker, but I'm getting old and fat now, so I avoid beer. And I hear vodka has a very low sugar level, so I try to switch.
Anybody else? Last questions for Nicolas? Yeah, one more.
Have you experienced game day in any fashion in Oxford? And what do you think about it?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's different from France.
Actually, I went to the Grove Saturday, and I never seen something like that in my entire life. I told to my friend who was there with me, it's so crowded, it looks like a strike in France. And yes, it's it's quite impressive. So many people gathering there for the purpose of football, but in fact just to drink. It's kind of something impressive, yes. I will be back.
Those people in the Grove have never been compared to people on strike. It's amazing. Can't find anybody more ethically and morally opposite. Anybody else? Other questions? No, not if you were there. I'm sorry. Other last questions for Nicolas? Anything else? Well, thank you all so much for coming out. Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Squarebooks, Richard, Lisa, Larry, and Cody, everybody. Nicolas will be over here signing books. Please go get and their children after them, and Rose Royale, and pre-order Connemara from Squarebooks. Thanks, everybody. See you at the bar.